Okay, pretty simple stuff here. That is a 12 by 24 cherry panel. I 99% of the times tape and clamp everything. So single-sided tape, super glue, off you go. And don't forget, guys, to use Vectrix or whoever you're using, easel or easy carve or whatever you're using. Make sure you set up your boundaries or your caution warning zones or keep out zones for wherever your clamps are. That is a wonderful tool that took me a couple months of starting using this software before I even knew it was there. I'm like, wow, I wish I'd have known that to begin with. But that's a great tool in the software to use. That way it'll read, so when it creates your tool path, it will change your tool path to allow your bit to not pass through where your keep out zones are. And it works really well. I have seen a few times though with Vectrix software that on the return ending path that it's nicked a few clamps in places it shouldn't have. So I'm not sure what's going on there. It's probably a bug. It might even be fixed by now. But so I just use a little bit of super glue in the middle here. Just a little wiggly piece. And I've got an alt mill 4x4. Love it. I do a flip, little spray, the accelerant. And I always make sure that bam down, hold it tight. I get clamps on it all the way around while it's drying. Now we all know that it dries really, really quick, but I like to get it clamped down all the way around right away and let it sit just a minute or so. And the outside edge clamps will stay on. They'll just stay on through the whole carve. That way you don't have to worry about anything moving on you at all, especially during the roughing. It's a lot of force. I like those U-tool clamps. They're cheap for what you get. They are bulky and they're in the way, and if you use a dust boot, they can be troublesome. They can get in the way. I do have some of the small clamps like IDC carries and some other models, but I tend to use these more than anything. So right now I'm just gonna bring up the CNC. We're gonna swap out the bit. And I'm sure you guys everybody's seen all this, but I'm just going to run through the whole procedure for you guys. Got a lot of requests for videos on this, so we'll just run through the whole gambit. I purchased I can't remember exactly what they call it, but it's a zero block from Scilabs. And, it's like $86. And it really is some of the best $86 I've spent in this. We all waste a lot of money on stuff we break and don't use, but this is one of the best 86 bucks I've ever spent. So there's the beast bit, tight, snug, but not too tight. There's the block, auto zero block right there. It just sits on there wonderfully. And you basically, I used G-Sender, and it actually will in G-Sender, it'll set itself up. You can just select it and it just works. And I think it probably would with any CNC machine that you had, because that's setting for just the G-Sender. Because it basically just checks for continuity. And then it goes across, finds the outside of the bit, and then finds the other outside of the bit, and on both ways, and then it can just calculate the center point, it's pretty simple. But I'm not really using any force here, but if you have a really dirty bit, it may bump that block just a little bit, and if it bumps the block, a lot of times your zero isn't really true. So I like to just hold it and grab it, and then if I feel a bump it, I'll clean the bit off and start over again. So there's my fancy dust boot. That's you can tell that master of none there. I have a lot of duct tape, but it works. We've all broken mini dust shoes, so you basically use it until it absolutely falls off by itself. It's been ducked and taped, and I actually have another one I 3D printed sitting underneath the bench probably for about 3 months now. Super simple. I'm going to load up the roughing program. That's GSender. So GSender, load up the roughing toolpath that we outputted earlier. I did go back and put in the keep away zones so it won't hit our clamps on the side. Turtle V5, roughing 1, and there it is. Always check to make sure you've got your centers or your starting point set. So that one's bottom left, and off it goes. That bit runs at about 22,000 RPM. It'll start at about 145 inches per minute because that's where it's set, and then I always bump it up to 173, 180. At 0.35 depth, it can do a lot more than that, but boy, it makes me nervous. So that's where I run it at. That's there. So roughing this piece probably will take anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour. It just depends, it depends if it's just a hair deeper, sometimes it makes 4 passes instead of 3. There we go. That's about where I run that beast bit at. 173 inches a minute. It can run 200 no problem, and it probably 0.5. But there's a image of what we're cutting. Little video of the roughing mode. I'm sure everybody's seen it, but it's kind of cool to look at as it's going along. I think that's the 3rd and final pass. There's the 4th pass. It's done. We're going to swap out the bit. Once again, let's not make too much fun of my dust boot there. For those of you new, I really like one of the Festool lines of vacuums. They're nice and quiet, adjustable speed. They last a long time. I bought a cheap Hercules and some other one that didn't last very long at all. But whatever you do, make sure you get some type of cyclone. I went with a DeWalt one. It was like $100. Came with a metal can and a cyclone, and it's probably the best $100 I've ever spent as far as keeping sawdust separated. So this is the beast bit that I just took off. So this is the Skinny Jenny bit. I got this from this. They have lots of. You can buy these several places, but IDC is a fairly decent deal on these. Made by Candice or Canadis or. But Skinny Jenny bit's a 1/32 radius bit, taper ball nose. There are several. So any of these, and I think if I remember right, I show some other ones that are kind of nice to know because if you guys go and you look at Amazon and you check for 1/32 radius, so that bit right there is an AR Aranta, and there's an SB tool 1/32. Both of those are wonderful bits. I've cut lots of stuff on them. They do the exact same quality work, in my opinion, as the Jenny bit does, but they are cheaper. If you go into Amazon and you search for those, either one of those for 1/32 taper ball nose, those will pop up pretty quick. And as long as you stick with the SPE tool or that Orianto, you're pretty good. So you can usually buy two for about the price of one of those Skinny Jennies. I just had to try one. He was having a holiday sale. Here's another nice thing with that block. If you flip the block over, and a lot of us have the zero indicator, but you just flip it over and boom, you can use zero. It's just wonderful. Works great. And if you're not using these, I went use the paper method for a long time, and this is the best, one of the best things I ever did. So here we're gonna get the 3D cut going, load it up the file, messy shop, and there she goes. Shut the vacuum cleaner off. So here we go. Starts off. So right away, I usually bump it up. So I'm going to bump that bit up. And we're going to run that tapered ball nose at 179. One of the nice things, I forgot to mention that Skinny Jenny bit runs at 15,000 RPM, which is, I had to actually go check it, double check it, because a lot of most everything else runs, I think, around the 16,000, 18,000 RPM. And I do a lot of other things in the shop while this is running, so it is kind of nice. The slower speed is a little bit quieter, so that's why you'll see me use that bit a lot. Just about halfway through, does a wonderful job. Carve looks really good. Okay, Carve's about done. Looks really good. That cherry has some interesting grain lines in it, which it really probably looks pretty cool stained. We're going to paint it, but that looks pretty cool. Boom. I did speed this up. I don't work this fast. We're going to put the beast bit back in. I pretty religiously put my bits back in the container right away. I started off, I had a really bad habit of throwing everything on a tray or to the side of the CNC, and it was just, it's a lot easier to just put them back. Zero on the bit again real quick. Good to go. And we'll load up the program quick. The cutout program we already made. I run that probably about 150 when I'm cutting these out. And I usually do a reverse final path cut of allowance of like 0.015. And okay, so here we're done with the cutout. And if you did it right, it cuts right to the nub perfectly. So this is a little nylon flap wheel. It's just basically a nylon bristle brush. You can see it real well right there. I did speed this up about 300%. And honestly, probably don't spend 5 minutes going over this. And that's another reason I like to use the cherry wood. It seems to do a really nice job carving. There's very little cleaning we have to do. I hear a lot of people with horror stories on their carves on the cleanup. But I usually go all directions with it. And if you have a stubborn one, you just grab a little wire brush and hit it quick and it's done. And that's really pretty much it for the buffing it. Pull the tape off quick. And one thing I usually do before I move it over to staining is put keyholes in. And I'm sure you guys have all done this and everybody's seen it a million times, but I just went ahead and since we started from the beginning on this project, creating this piece, I'm just going to show everything. So with the 3D Carve, there's, obviously it's hard to turn over upside down and get flat. So I use these little triangles. Everybody's got some facsimile of them, and they just cushion. They work wonderfully. You just, they put it on the even corners and clamps down tighter than you know what. I usually measure, usually come 3 inches in, 2.5, 3 inches. And there's so their Vectric does have a keyhole tool path, and I've got a keyhole bit that I think I got from CIC Workshop. Of course, they're out there everywhere. But I usually go a 1/4 inch deep and like 1.5 inches long on these tool paths. And then I have one tool path that I set up that's just a centered tool path, so I don't use it for everything. Do a paper method here real quick because the bit's not long enough to use a zero tool. Everybody knows how to use paper method. And we'll cut this quick. Once again, this is sped up 300%. I check both sides to see if I need to zero the other side. And if you keep your y-axis still and just move the x-axis, you don't have to. It's just just perfect on the other side. So it's a no-brainer. Don't have to get fancy with the measuring or anything. And boom, boom, we've got 2 quick tool paths. We'll pull that piece off. Good to go. Okay, this is right from the CNC right over to the bench. Got to see, I got a cutting board sitting there. And I usually use a 320 for the cherry. Cherry sand's so easy. You don't be too aggressive with it. You could hand sand this if you wanted to. It wouldn't be a big deal at all. I love those 3M pads. They're the best thing going out there by far. And I do have ventilation going across me. And so literally, guys, I get a lot of comments that how long do you spend sanding? Well, I've only spent maybe 3 or 4 or 5 minutes with the nylon brush. And this I sped up 150%, but it's only about 5 minutes as well. So maybe a total of 10 minutes sanding the whole piece, which to me is pretty reasonable because nobody likes to sand, and it looks wonderful. Another reason why I like to use cherry. It's easy to sand, takes the stain really well, it's got beautiful wood. It's one of the cheaper hardwoods out there. Yeah, it's a little more expensive than pine or what have you, but you get, pine carves poorly, in my opinion. I just do a rough over all the edges here. I'm obviously not a woodworker. I just give it a quick. It doesn't take any of the backs, pretty much 180 already when I get these panels. CIC Workshop sells these. I want to believe they're like $29 for a 12 by 24 inch and a 1/4 inch panel. They have maple and walnut and everything else, but I really like carving with these cherry panels. They make beautiful. If you do a cherry panel and use mahogany stain for like Last Supper or anything religious, it's just the perfect color combination for what you normally see in church. So that's done. Sanding, ready for stain. Okay, this is staining. I did speed this up quite a bit. But I've had a lot of requests just to see my process, so here it is. This is a dark walnut. I don't think it really matters what you stain it with. You could also use a universal sealer if you wanted to. I mean, since we're painting it, it really doesn't matter. The stain, makes the back look nice for one, and it does seal the wood. It seals a lot of. If you paint that bare wood, you're going to go through a lot of paint. But you could use a universal, I wouldn't use a wax sealer, but you could use a universal sealer, or you could even, you got to be a little careful what you use for sealer. You don't want anything real glossy because it would make it really tough. The paint needs to stick to something. So But this is the way I started doing it. I'm sure there's 100 people that'll say it's wrong or it's not the right way to do it, but I've done probably 50 pieces like this, and it just works really well. Once again, 300% speed. And I honestly don't let the stain sit for more than 30 seconds. I really just don't. We're not doing furniture here. Flip it. I've had a lot of questions on staining and getting the stain out of the cracks and what have you. And so if you start with a nice piece that's the grooves are cleaned up and it's not all fuzzy, which those little nylon brushes do a fantastic job of, it is really not too bad. But what I do is I obviously wipe it all down, and I don't use any stains that are going to start my trash can on fire. But I always leave my rags really safe regardless. But I wipe it down as best as I can, like this, and then I just take compressed air and I blow all the cracks, and it just blows the stain across, wipe it down again, blow this, just repeat that across it. It really doesn't take very long. I probably spend 10 minutes staining this whole thing, but the compressed air does wonders to get it out of the stain, out of all those little cracks and places, because it needs to be dry. You don't want to start painting on one of these if it's wet. You'll get all kinds of little spots where the paint won't stick, and you'll be really frustrated. And honestly, right now this piece looks, I mean, all of these always look wonderful. Sometimes I almost feel guilty painting them because they're so nice. I mean, the wood's really beautiful. I've had a few requests for people just, hey, I just love the piece. They bought the painted one, they just want a non-painted one also. And I think if I was going to sell these online, I would post, I would post one of each. And I'd probably do. I probably will. So this piece is completely done, basically. I always let it dry for 2 days before I'm finished. And there it is. Looks wonderful. In 2 days, we'll start painting.